WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
William Walter of Germantown is the Democratic candidate in the 24th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. William Walter, welcome to WisconsinEye.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for participating in our interview. First, to start off, what is your campaign's key message and why are you running for this office?
Well, as I'm sure most Wisconsin voters are aware, based on the $50 million Supreme Court race, we do have new maps this cycle. For the first time in a long time, it feels like Wisconsin isn't an insurmountable gerrymander. We have new districts, which means, in my opinion, a chance at a fresh start, a new voice for a new district. I think it's imperative for young people to have a seat at the table. It's a demographic that's often ignored, often dismissed, at least until 6 to 12 months before an important election, at which point it's rah, 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 young people, let's get engaged, let's get involved. But I think to build that kind of energy or momentum, to inspire people to vote for someone they support rather than voting defensively, which is something I hear unfortunately too often. To do that, you need to offer tangible progress. You need to say, this is what we're going to do for you, this is how we're going to improve your life, and this is why it matters. And I firmly believe we have a very unique opportunity with the new maps this cycle to kind of reapproach the relationship that Wisconsinites have with their government and take a fresh look at what we can do to help improve working class conditions across the board.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that you would prioritize?
Well, the big two right now, obviously, are women's reproductive rights and how that falls under kind of bodily autonomy in general, and Badger Care expansion. As a young person, healthcare is something that's very important to me because I hear how often fellow young people are struggling. The cost of living continues to skyrocket while wages have stagnated. And if we want to be able to get these individuals involved, if we want our communities to thrive, they have to be able to survive. And it's hard to survive when you're focused on putting a roof over your head, focused on putting food on your table. Obviously, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First thing you got to do is be able to make sure you can make it to tomorrow. Once you can make it to tomorrow, you can pursue your passions, you can pursue your dreams. So if there was one bill that I would immediately want to get behind, it would be the expansion of Badger Care.
If you're elected, you'd be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year. Mm-hmm. The state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your priority for spending the surplus?
I don't like to call it spending. I think spending, the negative connotations around spending make a lot of individuals kind of distrust the process. We are investing in our communities. We are not spending this money for the sake of spending it. We are investing in Wisconsinites, whether that's through fixing the roads, whether it's through putting money into education. An educated population benefits everyone. We have more workers that are more well-versed, more skilled, more self-sufficient, and that improves economic output across the board. So I do think that there's a fine balance to this. We can also, with this large surplus, cut taxes for a lot of Wisconsinites that are struggling because of the increased cost of living, but it needs to be hyper-targeted. These tax cuts should be going to working-class Wisconsinites. Cycle after cycle, particularly at the national level, with the prior administration, we saw some of the largest tax cuts in American history for some of the wealthiest individuals in the country, and I firmly believe that this trickle-down approach is kind of a Fox science. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't accomplish anything. While it might be, cool on paper, a lot of these individuals tend to hoard this wealth. This wealth consolidates in the hands of an elite few, and the income inequality we see today, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but across the country, is unsustainable in my opinion. So I think the very best thing we could do right now is with this massive budget surplus is A, reinvested in the state of Wisconsin, reinvested in education, reinvested in fixing our roads and our infrastructure, and then B, offer some financial relief to the working class Wisconsinites that at the end of the day are the engine of economic development.
You mentioned investing in education. K-12 is a leading issue for many Wisconsin voters. What's your key priority for changes in K-12 education?
Well, we've seen a lot of districts have to go to referenda because they're struggling to be able to afford what they need to offer the high-quality guaranteed education that we should expect in the wealthiest country in the history of our species. I think a lot of this, too, comes down to I'm a firm supporter of public schools. Public education is the backbone of the vast majority of not just Wisconsin communities, but American communities. We're proud of our public schools because our public schools produce productive adults. And these public schools need the resources. We need to make sure these public schools are given not just ample resources, but more than enough resources to properly provide the best education possible for all of our students, for all of our children. As someone who graduated relatively recently compared to a lot of the my more experienced, let's say, contemporaries, to put it nicely, I recognize how different education might be today compared to 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But education is consistently changing. We have access to new information. We have access to better standards, more efficient means of preparing our students and our children for a modern workforce. And if schools don't have the resources to do this, we're only going to continue falling further and further behind.
What about higher education? What does the future of Wisconsin's 4- and 2-year colleges as well as technical colleges look like to you? And what should the legislature be focusing on in higher education?
Again, it's the same thing. Education is an investment, right? You don't ever say, oh, we're spending all this money on fixing X, Y, and Z if the purpose of fixing X, Y, and Z is to improve the day-to-day lives of the citizens who take advantage of whatever resource we're investing in. Education is the same way. Now, not everyone, college isn't the best opportunity for every student, and I think my generation, as a tail end of the millennials, I'm right on the cusp of millennial Gen Z, we kind of grew up being told, if you want to succeed, you go to college. That's just what you do. And I think that's kind of a false narrative that I don't think our parents did maliciously. I think it was what they had been told from a lot of media apparatuses and the powers that be in the country that we wanted a well-educated population, so you need to send them to college or they're never going to get a good job or all these kind of things. And that's simply not the case. The trades are incredibly important. 2-year community colleges do a wonderful job preparing our students, whether they want to continue their education or whether they want to jump into the workforce right away.
Does Wisconsin need to invest more in higher education?
Yes. And I think we need to invest significantly more in higher education because, like I said, every dollar invested in education will return the favor in future economic productivity.
What's the state's largest workforce development challenge and how should the legislature address it?
Well, I think Wisconsin's actually in a pretty good place right now. Unemployment is very low. I do think one thing, and this is more of a national issue, more so than the state itself, but I think we have a problem in the United States with, much like wealth has consolidated in the hands of an elite few, more and more companies continue to merge. We don't have the same anti-monopolization efforts that we may have seen in past administrations going back, half a century. And small businesses, in my opinion, are outside of education kind of the backbone of many communities. And the more small businesses we have, the more healthy competition we have economically, the more innovation we will see, the more high-quality jobs we can offer, the more protection we can guarantee a workforce in desperate need of protection as these massive multinational corporate conglomerates simply see us as a number, it's a bottom line means more to them than anything. An employee is disposable if it'll save you just a few extra pennies on the dollar. And I think that's unhealthy. I think that's unsustainable. And I think the more we focus on some of these mom and pop small business type entities, the stronger the results will be going forward.
2 more workforce questions for you. Investments in public energy and infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce. But currently, there aren't any requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes, I would. You keep that money back home. It's a bad example, but I love to say this at my doors, my clipboard here. Handcrafted by a local Wisconsin woodworker, right? We support those in our community. We support those in and around us because they will return the favor. These are our people. These are the people that we live with, that we work with, that we see at the gym, that we see at church. These are the people that we should be focusing on if we want to create happy, healthy, thriving communities we can all be proud to call home. And when you invest in local, when you invest in the workforce locally, you're able to grow not just your public sector, but your private sector, your education, everything under that umbrella kind of advances. All rising tides lift all ships type perspective.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what should be done about it?
Yes, I am. And again, it comes down to big corporations, massive multinational conglomerates, don't play by the same rules as everybody else. Their money, resources, influence kind of insulate them from the problems that hardworking Wisconsinites, regular folks, small businesses, we do have to play by the rules because we don't have the resources to get out of it. We don't have teams and teams of lawyers to protect us when we may make mistakes, whether intentional or not. In a lot of cases, I think a lot of these big businesses are acting maliciously. They are just trying to save their bottom line. They are reclassifying these workers in an attempt to prevent them from getting the benefits that they are owed, to pay them under the table so that they don't have to cross the T's and dot the I's with legal requirements. And I think, again, that until we punish these entities, they're going to see this as the cost of doing business. When the punishment is simply a fine, it's just the cost of doing business. It's the old recall argument where, if the recall is cheaper than the lawsuits caused by the damage of your faulty product, then you just don't do the recall because the bottom line is all that matters. So I think it needs to be a combination of obviously financial punishment, but also if individuals are breaking the law, when you and I break the law, we go to jail. It doesn't tend to happen with corporate executives. They play by a different set of rules, and until they are forced to play on the same field as the rest of us, they're going to continue pushing the envelope as far as they can.
Moving on to housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What's your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Rent control, building more rentals, or another?
I think it's supply. It's simply supply. Let's not overcomplicate this. If you took a 9th grade economics class, you're well aware of the concept of supply and demand, and we just don't have enough housing at this point. We need to be building more housing. We need to be preventing restrictions on building housing, but also incentivizing multifamily units, higher density living situations. Every community wants to, bring in more single-family homes because it's larger for their tax revenue, the tax base increases. But realistically, the purpose of housing is not to make a profit. It shouldn't be to make a profit. It's to provide human beings with a place to live. And if you're going to take the stance, as I do, that housing is a human right, we should be doing all we can to make sure as many people are housed as possible, because they can't live their life to the fullest. They can't be productive members of society. They can't contribute to our communities if they don't have their basic necessities met. And until we increase the housing supply, I don't think we're going to be able to solve this. That would be the step 1, 2, and 3 that I would take, is build more housing.
I'm moving on to healthcare. Medical systems facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to healthcare and prevent future closures?
Well, again, healthcare is a human right. Even I firmly believe in the wealthiest country in the history of our species, that if we can't even protect the health of our communities, of our neighbors, of our friends and family, what other purpose does a government serve at that point? It's meant to serve the people. It's not meant to serve the interests of business. We have federal dollars on the table for Badger Care expansion on the state, in the state right now that our legislature has refused to take up. I think that's unacceptable. Eventually, I would like to move to a single-payer system. Only 32 of the 33 industrialized nations across the globe have figured out this complex beast. It can be done. It would be rather easy to accomplish, in my opinion, except the insurance industries have a lot of influence. They have a lot of capital. They have an incentive to obviously keep themselves alive as basically the middleman, designed to, let's say, extrapolate wealth from sick and struggling human beings. And that's, first of all, grotesque, but second of all, I don't think that represents what a healthcare industry should be built on.
What about mental health care? What are you hearing on that issue in your district, and how do you propose addressing mental health care?
Mental health care falls under that same umbrella. Dental, vision, hearing, mental health, these are all aspects of human health. Human health is a human right. We need to be investing in these in this industry, because the more we push it down the road, the more we kick the can down, the more problematic this will become as more and more people start to fall further and further behind. And until we, let's say, solve the problem at its roots, which is that human health is paramount, I think we're going to continue to see issues getting worse.
What about abortion policy? How should Wisconsin move forward on that issue?
A woman's right to choose is between her family, her doctor. The government has no business telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her own body. Women's reproductive health and women's reproductive freedom should fall only to the individual in question.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce? Again,
infrastructure is an investment. We're not spending money, we are investing in our communities. We are trying to show the people in our communities, in our district, what collectively we are able to accomplish when we work towards one singular goal. I would like to see more public transportation options. Obviously, in the city of Milwaukee, public transportation is significantly better than out in my neck of the woods. But suburban areas, we tend to have a little bit more space. It's a little harder to not just build the public transportation necessities, but you kind of need to have a vehicle yourself for the individual freedom with that kind of distance. So that would be a down-the-road project, but I do believe in investing in infrastructure is paramount because of the fact that everybody uses it.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose addressing it?
Of course, clean air and clean water. I mean, once we've lost clean air and clean water, we've lost a habitable planet. Once we've lost a habitable planet, the future of our species is on the line. I think that comes down to, again, you need to punish the polluters. These PFAS, these chemicals in the water, doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't magically appear in the sky and rain down into our water supply. These are the multinational corporate conglomerates, again, the massive corporations that have a financial incentive to be polluting our waterways, our airways, in order to save themselves a few extra dollars, in order to throw a few more dollars at their multi-million CEO parachutes. And until we punish these individuals, they're going to keep pushing the limits.
Final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
I'll give credit where credit is due. Representative Knodel clearly is a talented politician. You don't become a career politician without knowing what you're doing. Personally, I think his tenacity, specifically in regards to the personal property tax, has been very impressive. And it's something that I think a lot of individuals, when you have a goal and you have a dream and a desire and you think this is wrong, I need to get rid of it, he's done a phenomenal job pushing for what he believes in. But I do believe a lot of his views, particularly around women's reproductive freedom, particularly around government investment and cannabis legalization, are a little archaic. It's a time that does not exist in American culture anymore. When you've served for 16 years, I was in 8th grade. I was at the local middle school when Representative Knodel was first elected. So I do think he's been very responsive to me in the past, which I respect. But I do think it's time for a new voice. I don't think politics should be a career. I think it should be a calling. And I think once you've served your time, you need to recognize that more fresh voices provide a fresh perspective, and a fresh perspective provides new progress.
Final question. Let's say you're elected, you have a magic wand you can use over the state capitol for one issue that's resolved in a way that brings people together. What would that issue be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I get my magic wand for one issue. I'm inclined to say single-payer healthcare system. I'm a firm supporter in the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights as well, something that's been pushed at the national level. Wisconsin has a very rich history of progressive, forward, if you will, thinking policy. Whether it's the sewer socialists, whether it's the the fighting Bob La Follette era, we can get back to that if we want to build the future of tomorrow. So I will take single payer system as my one magic wand issue. I think big money in politics is another one as well that has kind of infested American electoral politics with the influence of the wealthy having essentially more power than an individual. The concept of one person, one vote is antithetical to money in politics. But healthcare is a big personal concern to me and to people in my district as I've spoken to them, as well as young people. And I believe it's paramount that young people get involved. Democracy is a participation sport, right? It's technically a noun, but it should be a verb because it requires all of us to do our job if we want to see it to thrive.
Well, thank you, William Walter of Germantown, the Democratic candidate for the 24th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. William Walter, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Lisa.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.